Let's take a look at vectors, and let's start talking about some basic notation first. We're going to be taking a look at vector v, which is going to be 4, 1, and vector w, which is going to be 3, 3. You're going to notice that our notation here, we have pointed brackets that are going to be used to designate a vector. That's different if we were talking about the point 4, 1 or the point 3, 3. We would use parentheses to designate these as points. When you see the pointed brackets, those are going to be designated as vectors. Let's go ahead and graph the vectors. On my grid, I'm going to go ahead and plot the point 4, 1 first. The point 4, 1 is plotted on my grid. Now let's go ahead and draw the vector 4, 1. When we draw our vector, we're going to start our vector at the origin, and our vector is going to end at that point 4, 1. The arrow is going to be what represents our vector, and I went ahead and labeled this one vector v. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the other vector, which was w, and the vector 3, 3. I'm going to go ahead and draw this one in red. So the first thing I did was plot my point 3, 3. Now let's go ahead and draw the vector. I'm going to draw this one in red too. Notice when I draw this vector, it ends at the point 3, 3. Let's take a look at what happens when we start to add vectors together. Let's take a look at v plus w. I'm going to be adding these two vectors together. When we do that, we're going to be adding the x components of our vectors together, and we're going to be adding the y components of our vectors together. This is going to give us the vector 7, 4. Let's go ahead and take a look at what happens when we plot that vector. Remember that this is what our vectors look like individually when we plotted each one. If we're going to add the two vectors together, v plus w, I'm going to go ahead and start with vector v and leave it right where it is. If I want to add vector w to that, I want to connect these tip to tail. Let me show you what I mean. I started with my vector v and left it right where it was. Recall that vector w was 3, 3. That means if I start at the end of this vector and go over 3 units and up 3 units, that's going to be where I'm going to add vector v to w. And these are going to be connected tip to tail. Let me draw my resultant vector. I drew my resultant vector v plus w in blue. Take a look at what happens. If I look at where this vector ends, the x component is 7, and the y component is 4. That's what we had down here when we added v plus w together.